Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Montreal-based jazz guitarist Greg Amirault. He has a new CD out that is 2021's News Blues, and it's his third recording as a leader. It features three of Canada's finest jazz musicians that includes his brother on piano, Steve. He is originally from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and has been living and performing in Montreal for over 30 years. Enjoy this story.
Greg, thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it. And, you know, I'm going to start off here with the fact that we're in a very strange place on planet Earth right now with COVID. And, I mean, we're kind of getting on the other side of it, but you have a new album called New Blues. Talk to me a little bit about what it means to release an album during this particular time.
I actually recorded it in 2020, January 2020, so that's coming up on 2 years really soon, right? So,
yeah.
Basically what happened is that was pre-pandemic, so we went and recorded it, and then everything got shut down. So I had a few extra things to do. There was solo guitar pieces on there that I wanted to do, and so I didn't make it back to the studio till probably 6 months after. And then in the fall, everything was still kind of shut down, so there was no way of having a launch or anything. So I waited until the next fall because of the pandemic and everything. I just wanted to do a launch and a release at a time when people would be able to come out and hear music and, you know, enjoy going out and not when the places, the spaces in the clubs wasn't so limited, you know, so that people could actually come out, because I didn't want to do a record launch in front of 20 people, you know. So yeah, it affected it quite a bit, actually.
So obviously the way that you viewed the world and constructed this, because it was pre-pandemic, do you have any, like, feelings now, like, how your approach to music would be different, obviously, because so much has happened since that time?
My approach is not really any different, I would say. I wouldn't say that really changed that. I mean, I'm playing a lot less than I used to because of that, because of the pandemic. That's one thing. And also, as a result, I mean, I'm working on some solo guitar things, which I guess most guitar players are, because they can just do it at home. That's a little different, but as far as musically, it's not really changed, you know. Recording-wise, it has, and actually playing in public has changed. But as far as my musical direction or whatever, it hasn't really changed. You know, it's still the same thing. It's just that I'm doing a little bit more by myself. So
Gotcha.
That would be about it, yeah.
So what do you hoping the listener gets from this album that either buys or downloads it?
You know, get taken on a little bit of a voyage, I guess, not to be too cliche, but there's some quite different moods and vibes on the recording. You know, some straight ahead swing stuff. A couple more things that are a little bit more modern sounding. Like there's a tune called Tribute Tune, which is kind of like pointed to people like John Abercrombie and those guys that in the early '80s and stuff that were on ECM and that kind of thing. And another one called Meeting the Master. Those are quite you know, modernish, I guess, to use that word. And then there's a few other ones like News Blues and Uninvited, Sweet Way, that are pretty standardish. I mean, it's like News Blues is just a blues in C minor. Not tribute, but Sweet Way is actually In Your Own Sweet Way by Dave Brubeck in 5/4. And Uninvited is Stella by Starlight. With you know, these all have different melodies, you know, that I wrote. It's the first time I've done that, you know, taken a tune and written a contrafact like a lot of people have done in the past. And I just thought, well, you know, I'd like to do that because I like playing these tunes, but I don't want to just play In Your Own Sweet Way. You know, I'd like to do something different to it. So I did that, and so and then there's a couple of solo guitar pieces too. So, you know, it's kind of spread out in a way that it goes from different vibe to different vibe, you know. So it's kind of doesn't stay in the same place for too long. I hope people like that, you know.
So, you know, over this time that we've had away from, you know, music and just quarantine lockdown, we all had to go into self-reflective mode. What did you learn about yourself that maybe you didn't know before this pandemic happened that's going to make you stronger as you reemerge to live music and promoting this album?
You know, realizing how important it is to play and be part of the music community. That's the biggest thing, I think, you know. So, you know, the desire to play and to realize how much that's a big part of what most musicians do, it's a big part of their lives. So without that, there's an element missing, you know. So getting to do that more and not taking it for granted, because I guess it's like any other thing with COVID and anyone else's life. It's a similar kind of thing. There's too many things that we take for granted that all of a sudden you can't do them, or you have to put them on hold for a while, and it really has an impact, I would say, to most people.
So you're originally from Nova Scotia. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood growing up and how, you know, not only music, but more specifically jazz became your profession.
My dad was a piano player who was not an improviser, but he played old standards. We had these Reader's Digest. We used to have these books. I don't know, there was like 3 or 4 of them, I guess. It was all the old American pop songs, like, you know, they're from the 30s, 40s and all that stuff. And the American Popular Songbook, you know, what people call jazz, or what jazz players took to play on. And so those kinds of things were there from an early age. So I heard some of that music, but in a pretty commercialized way. So it was mainly the melody and that kind of thing. So I was playing pop, rock, and blues, you know, until I was 20. But there was always things that kind of piqued my interest. So there was Chuck Mangione had this tune on the radio, "Feel So Good," and the guitar solo and the tune was completely different from everything else that was on the radio. So that really, really got my attention. And then I saw one night on TV for like 10 minutes this Pat Metheny thing that had, it was part of the Joni Mitchell Shadows and Light concert that they did with Jocko and Michael Brecker and Don Elias and Lyle Mays. So I got to see that, and that, you know, it came on TV, and it was gone. So I didn't really know who these people were, but I hadn't heard any music like that before. So, I mean, I'd heard Joni Mitchell, but I hadn't heard guitar solos like that and all that. So, you know, I went digging for that kind of stuff, and there wasn't much because it was pre-internet. So you'd get a couple of guitar player magazines and stuff, and you could get introduced to people like that way, you know, and yeah, that's kind of like how it kind of happened. And there was also Breezin' by George Benson, you know, like the Chuck Mangione thing, the George Benson thing, and the Pat Metheny were kind of like the things that I was able to, that crossed over. So for a while there, it was all crossover people I was listening to, like Larry Carlton and, you know, guitar-wise. And I didn't really get into jazz until I was 22, I guess. And I switched from engineering into music. And then I started listening to Joe Pass. That's kind of really what made the difference, because I could really hear Joe Pass playing a song, you know, like Autumn Leaves or whatever, and then he would solo, and then he played the melody at the end. So it wasn't like Coltrane or Miles, so it was still really accessible for me. And that was kind of like my way into like more the standard jazz was through Joe Pass. That was a huge thing. I mean, that record Virtuoso, I mean, I had that on a cassette. I had a Walkman back then, and I would just listen to that all the time. You know, it became a huge influence.
You know, as I'm listening to all of these musicians, I'm always blown away by the level of influence that Pat Metheny has on the world. I actually, of all things, when you recorded this album of January 2020, I moved in the Kansas City metro to the hometown of Pat Metheny, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Lee Summit, yeah.
So I actually, you might want to check this out just because Pat was an influence. There was a book released by Carolyn Glenn Brewer. She's a local author, and she delved into his early years in Lee Summit and the early Kansas City years and how instrumental the veteran cats were with him and how it kind of developed who he was before he moved on to bigger and better things. So it's interesting. He had quite a time here in Kansas City before he moved on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was playing in little groups with my brother and then 2 other brothers. There was 4 of us. Our fathers were both musicians and part-time musicians, but that's what they did. And so there was, one of them played guitar, one guy played bass, I played guitar, and my brother played drums. So we had a little band, and that, you know, that lasted a few years. And then, of course, when we went to high school, we met other people, and then, you know, then it kind of branched out and meeting other different people. Yeah.
So what was the first live jazz show you saw that really blew you away?
Oh man, first live jazz show. I think the first live jazz thing I saw was Ed Bickert. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Yeah.
he's Canadian. Yeah, great Canadian guitar player who just died a few years ago, and
Yeah.
he was incredible. So him and I don't know who was in the group, but that was the actual first high profile thing that I saw, other than the teachers that were playing at the university where I was studying music. Because in Nova Scotia there was you couldn't go out and hear, well, you could if you lived in Halifax, but I wasn't living in Halifax, so I mean I didn't actually hear any real jazz until or any live jazz until I went to that university in 1984. 82, I think, 1982, and I saw my teachers play. And then the guitar teacher actually took a bunch of students, and he drove us like an hour away to another small town where Ed Bickert was playing, I think, with Mo Kaufman and that regular group that they always played with. It was the Mo Kaufman Five or something. And that was it. And I'd only been listening to jazz for like a few months, like at that point. So I can't really, I remember really liking it, but as far as understanding anything, it took a few years before I was able to really, I think, really appreciate what was going on and how complicated it was and what it took to actually be able to do that, because my understanding of it was just too basic at that point. I really didn't know. So, but that was the first jazz show that I saw, and then in '86 or '87, I actually moved to Montreal in '87, and then with the Montreal Jazz Festival, then I got to see everybody.
Yeah,
sure. But I saw Pat Metheny do an outdoor concert, I think, in 1986, and it was huge. There was over 100,000 people there, and it was amazing.
Wow.
And, yeah, and that was huge. I remember that concert. That was huge. Yeah. He remembers that too. It's funny. He came to McGill as a guest. He got an honorary doctorate degree. So a few of the teachers at McGill, we got to meet him and everything. And so he actually talked about that concert, saying of how it was, it was a huge highlight for him because the amount of people that were there, and he remembers exactly where on what corner, what street it was on, and everything. So it was kind of interesting that it was quite memorable for him as well, that concert in '86. So
wow, that's cool. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you're, as a musician, what do you like the best about this process? What motivates you to make the music and really dive into this profession that you picked for your life?
Well, I love it for one thing. Just being able to sit there and create is a big thing, even if you're not out performing, just the fact that you can create, it's a pretty fulfilling kind of feeling. Plus, the more you dig into it, the more you see that you don't really know very much, and that there's so much to learn, and that you can just keep on studying and keep on learning and improving. So it's a never-ending thing. It's not like certain professions, I guess, a lot of professions are always evolving, but this thing is just, it's not changing with the times so much. It's just that there's such a huge history of it. You can go back 400 years, and there's music from Bach to now to check out, and it's vast. So you can always learn more. There's no, it's bottomless. It's endless. So that's one of the big things, is that there's always something new to check out. And then there's the new people coming out. So, the new stuff to check out is, it could be 100 years old, but it's new to people who haven't checked it out before. So there's always something new, plus the things that are being developed now. It's almost impossible to be on top of everything, and you kind of have to pick and choose and go for what you like, and then focus on these things, because no one can do everything, and it takes forever to listen to all the recorded music that there is to sift through and everything. So you just go from what people are talking about, and that kind of thing, and you just keep practicing every day, because it's enjoyable, and you're trying to get somewhere. And whether for a lot of us, whether we get a chance to actually do it in public, all the stuff we're working on, it's secondary in a way, because it's being able to sit there and go through it and learn. It seems to be the main thing for most people,
Absolutely.
So that's at least for me. Yeah.
When we do return in earnest more to this live stage once COVID slows down, what do you hope we all realize about the power of live music we've been away from for so long, both musician and the audience?
Well, I guess like I said before, it's really important, to be able to go and share and perform for people and have people enjoy it and be able to just relax and just enjoy going out to listen to music. I think that's the main thing. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about that, but it's just the enjoyment of the process and being able to share it, and hopefully the people that are listening are enjoying it as well.
Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of yourself. Who do you think you are?
Oh boy, that's a complicated one.
Right.
I'm just someone who's trying to create something and share with people. Hopefully they'll enjoy it. I spend a lot of my time teaching, sharing my knowledge, however deep it goes with people is a big part of who I am. I enjoy doing it. People who are really interested. And it's the same kind of thing for playing too. It's a sharing kind of process. I'm basically a guy who's just trying to play the guitar best possible and live the best possible life as well, with the least amount of conflict and stay focused and centered. And it's like you said, it's not easy these days with our current situation, unfortunately.
Greg, that's a great answer, man. Great way to wrap it up. Thank you for taking some time out to talk about the new album and your life from music. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Montreal, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Greg for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.